Now, the call to abandon the triple lock, which is an ongoing debate, and we know that Jennifer Carroll MacNeill used the occasion of the Bail na Bláth speech to reiterate that ambition on the part of certainly the government parties. It will be resisted line by Sinn Féin, they say. Just remind people of the triple lock, exactly who controls where we go and how many troops.
Yes, so the triple lock came in 1960, and the triple lock means that for Ireland to deploy troops on an international peacekeeping operation, three things must happen. First of all, there must be a government decision, there must be Dáil approval, and there must be United Nations authorisation. And it was brought in 1960 because the government of the day didn't trust the United Nations. The United Nations had just been formed, Ireland had just joined, and they wanted to ensure that Dublin would have a veto over any direction or orders that would come from New York, where the United Nations headquarters is. But unfortunately, it's been changed or I guess misdirected over the last recent years, in that we don't trust our own Irish government, and that we need United Nations approval just to ensure that everything is done legitimately. So that's the background of the triple lock. And obviously, I'm very respectful to both sides of the debate here. But my own personal view is that it's a mechanism that no other country has, and for good reason, because every other country in the world regards defence as a national competence and the exclusive preserve of their own parliament. It's very unusual to have an external body giving approval or otherwise for movement of your national troops. So it does undermine Ireland's sovereignty, it does undermine Ireland's neutrality, and it's also inconsistent with international law. So the United Nations Charter is the closest thing we have to a global constitution, and Article 52 is very clear. It gives legitimacy for regional actors and regional organisations like the EU or the African Union to deploy troops, provided the mission is consistent with the purposes and the principles of the United Nations. So even though we've signed up to the UN Charter, we've said, well, we don't like that. This is how Ireland wants to do our business, and we want to do it separately. So that's a concern, and that makes me uncomfortable that our domestic legislation is inconsistent with international law.
What has brought this into sharp focus, I suppose, is Ukraine's invasion by Russia, which, given that Russia is on the Security Council and would have a veto, should Irish peacekeeping troops be invited, for example, to partake in some post-war operation in Ukraine, Russia could say, no thanks, we won't have those.
And that point is quite timely at the moment, Pat, because over the next few days in the United Nations in New York, the UNIFIL Lebanon mandate is also being currently reviewed. And there is a possibility that Israel will be pushing the United Nations, will be pushing the United States, I should say, to veto the UN mandate for UNIFIL. And if that veto is deployed in the next few days, Ireland is the only country of the 40 countries in UNIFIL that will have to legally withdraw immediately from the United Nations mission in Lebanon. So it's a concern from that perspective, that we have outsourced really or delegated a function which is a primary function of any nation state to an external body. It's a mechanism, the triple lock is a mechanism that a colony would have rather than a nation state.
Cathal, will you just explain to me, if the United States withdrew its approval, it would have to specify it was doing so for Ireland, would it?
No. So basically, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, each of them have a veto that they can deploy as they see fit. Now, they could abstain from a vote, or they could actually veto a mandate. So every 12 months, the United Nations mandate in UNIFIL is renewed. Ireland has 350 troops there at the moment. And if the United States vetoes the renewal of the United Nations mandate in UNIFIL, Ireland is the only country of the 40 deployed there that would have to withdraw. The only reason we would have to legally withdraw is because of the triple lock, whereas all the other countries who quite rightly don't have a triple lock can stay if they wish. It'll be a political decision.
Explain that to me, how they could stay if the United States vetoes the renewal of the mandate. That means surely that the whole UNIFIL force could not continue, no matter who they are.
So the United Nations force would have to cease being a United Nations operation. But what could happen is the other 39 members could be what's called rehatted. They could remove their blue berets, put on their national headdress, and stay in a different capacity. So there would still be a peacekeeping operation under Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. They could be coordinated by the European Union, the African Union, the Arab League, or whatever regional organisation that decides to take ownership of it. But Ireland is the only country country that would have to legally withdraw. All the other countries, it'll be a political decision whether they stay or whether they leave.
Okay.
But Ireland must leave.
We'd be forced out. Okay. Cathal, it's just interesting. We had Colin McCarthy on during the summer, and he was talking about the cost of joining NATO. It could force the government to spend the entire cost of the Metrolink on defence every year, Colin McCarthy said. At present, the amount of GDP we spend on the military is 0.25 of 1%. That's a quarter of 1%. 5% would be 20 times that. So you'd be giving up neutrality, joining NATO, spending 25 billion a year every year on bombs and bullets. That's for those who advocate joining of NATO. You don't think anyway that is what we want to do, join NATO, but is that kind of spending what we are required to do?
No, so 3 billion is a good rule of thumb, and you would provide a certain capability on land, sea and air and cyberspace if you decide to invest 3 billion in national security every year. And this was a figure that was actually put out by the Commission on the Defence Force. So Colin McCarthy's figures are outlandish there in that regard. If you wanted to join NATO and you were trying to look for a reason why we shouldn't, and you want to use financial reasons, they're the type of figures you would be throwing around to turn people off. But the vast majority of the Irish public and Irish parliamentarians want Ireland to maintain its neutrality. And the best way to do that is to resource our own defence forces. And the problem with any policy is we have a policy of neutrality, but we haven't resourced that policy. It's like having a housing policy or a health policy and you choose not to resource it. It's going to fail. So currently our neutrality policy is failing because we haven't resourced our own defence forces.
The question of the triple lock and neutrality, I mean, they're not in theory linked at all. It's all about United Nations deployment, isn't it?
I would say neutrality and triple lock are linked, but from a different perspective than what's been put out there. I think the triple lock actually undermines our neutrality, not supports it. And let me tell you why. So going back to the UNIFIL renewal mandate, if Ireland is going up to the Kremlin or to the Russian ambassador in New York and saying, listen, we would like Russia to support the UNIFIL mandate. And Russia has now a leverage over Ireland. And Russia will say, okay, Ireland, no problem, we won't veto the mandate, but we would like you to tone down your criticism of Russia in relation to Ukraine. And that's a concern for me because neutrality is about freedom of expression and freedom of movement. Similarly, if we asked the United Nations or the United States not to veto it in New York, United Nations or United States could say quite rightly, yeah, Ireland, okay, we agree not to veto the UNIFIL mandate renewal, but we would like you to tone down your criticism of Israel in relation to Gaza. So the triple lock does not support Irish neutrality, it undermines it.
All right, Cathal, thank you very much for joining us, former member of the Defence Forces, Cathal Berry. Some of the comments coming in, how come when it comes to the triple lock, TDs and others always use language like, it allows us to make independent decisions, but when it comes to immigration and other issues, we're told the EU makes the decisions or we have international obligations. To clarify, the UK protects our airspace and territorial waters, and we need the UK's permission, plus the other 4 permanent members of the Security Council, to do anything. I thought we got independence from the UK about 100 years ago. When will we be a truly independent country, asks Michael in Cork. The Defence Forces need aircraft, including drones, 1 heavy-lift plane to take Irish troops to area to evacuate Irish citizens, proper high-seas-going ships, not coastal boats, additional radar, sonar gear, up the numbers of recruits by conscription, anyone on long-term unemployment between 18 and 30, get them to do something for the state payments they're getting anyway. I'm not sure how much support there would be for that. We can't trust the UN. We can't trust our politicians. Our sovereignty is long gone.